Also known as the Vikings of the American age, the Wild West legends knew no limits. Killing was their ultimate purpose, and becoming famous was their eternal dream. But how did the strongest of the strongest, the most ruthless outlaws to ever walk on the face of the earth, end up dying? Join us on this journey as we uncover the tragic deaths of the Wild West legends and gunslingers, and watch till the end, because the last one will shock you. Bill Doolin. Starting off with the founder of one of the infamous gangs of outlaws called the Wild Bunch, which is not the same as Butch Cassidy's Wild Bunch, Bill Doolin was a badass most people would remember as an influential Wild West figure. He, with his gang, would raid banks and trains, killing countless men and women, and then looting throughout, as if tomorrow would never come. They terrorized the Old West in the 1890s, and crime was quite frowned upon at that time. What set Doolin aside from other killers like Butch Cassidy was that, unlike Cassidy, Doolin was known for his anger, ruthlessness, and straight-up murderous intensity. This is why he took part in numerous shootouts with lawmen and escaped his fate of death countless times. However, as all great things fail, Doolin was caught and imprisoned while in a bathhouse, but being the angry, aggressive delinquent he was, he escaped his fate once again. Not long after, a deputy U.S. Marshal confronted Bill Doolin and killed him with a shotgun in cold blood. Doolin was someone who evolved raids of the 19th century and really paved the way for new villains to come in. But since he was doing raids after raids, his fate was already set, and there was a huge price on his head until he was dead, with a photograph that made him look human for the very first time. Others thought he was some kind of god, because he would never die. John Wesley Hardin. For John Wesley Hardin, violence seemed like it was more than just a random event in his life, but a part of it. Since he was born in post-Civil War Texas and killed his first man at just the age of 15, that set the stage for him to become one of the most ruthless murderers of the Wild West. Wesley Hardin himself claims that he killed over 40 men during his lifetime. But when we run the numbers, it's closer to 20. His main victims would be in situations that would begin as minor disputes, but quickly escalate. And sure enough, the guy who has seen war all his life had only one way to deal with disputes: murder. His volatile nature and talent for the quick draw of his pistol made him both hunted and feared, which is why most people wouldn't even want to go against him. But it was in 1877 when he was captured, leading to a 25-year prison sentence. However, he only served 17 years, and after his initial release, Hardin studied law and passed the oral Texas bar exam. From there, he would take off as a reformed lawyer and a changed man. In many ways, he did change while also serving his country and his state. However, in 1895, the changed Hardin was in a saloon in El Paso, where he was shot in the back of the head and several times more after he fell onto the floor. But who was the killer? Meet John Selman Sr., who was recently feuding with Hardin. However, Selman escaped the punishment for the Balaton killing later on. Pretty good luck, I would say. Belle Starr. How can we forget everyone's favorite, the dangerous Belle Starr? She was not famous for large-scale robberies or crazy shootouts, but for her association with the outlaws. From the beginning, Belle Starr belonged to a reputable family that educated her in a classical manner. Her path into criminality doesn't seem like it was influenced by others, but rather her own choice. After the American Civil War, her brother died fighting as a bushwhacker. This is the main reason why Belle got involved with the outlaws, who then would form the James Younger Gang.
You asked for it.
But while most people of the gang thought Belle wouldn't offer anything of their interest, to their surprise, she was a skilled shooter who would wear black velvet and a plumed hat, giving her a very Maleficent-like vibe. In her prime years, she never really garnered too much attention, but it was after her death that Belle Starr became more of a legendary figure. Her murder was quite random in 1889, and while traveling to Hope, she was shot while riding a horse. What's crazy is that Belle got killed by her very own. Her tragic death left a huge impact on her loved ones, but this just raises so many questions. Was Belle killed by someone else? Or did she misfire and end up killing herself? This is a question we would never know the answer to. Calamity Jane. Just her name was enough to shake fear into her enemies' hearts. Born around 1852, the legendary Calamity Jane is a frontier icon because not only is she a skilled shooter and rider, but later in her life, she also joined Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, where she took traditional roles of women in the Old West.
To get Daddy.
Calamity Jane wore men's clothing and could take care of herself more than any man of her time. To make things interesting, when both of her parents died, she took care of 5 younger siblings as they traveled across the country. Mind you, this was Jane, still a teenager. But when she came into adulthood, she worked as a scout for the U.S. Army, and that toughened her up. She was always in conflict with the Native American tribes, and some say that she had an affair with America's finest Wild West legend, Bill Hickok. Moreover, separating fact from fiction, being Calamity Jane wasn't easy, as she couldn't read or write, so we don't know much about her. Her demise was rather slow, because Jane, as great as she was, had an alcohol addiction and spent her last months in Terry, South Dakota, where she died in poverty. Such a tragic death for someone who could have been in every American legend book today. Davy Crockett. Many of you might have known the name of Davy Crockett, also known as the King of the Wild Frontier. When you think about Davy and who he actually was, you will get a plethora of answers. Some would say that he was a frontiersman, others would say a storyteller, while he was also a congressman at one time, making his records very interesting. But by now, we know that he was a hero as he died fighting the Battle of the Alamo, where he took his last breath in 1836. You see, the story is so old that it's really hard to check what the actual facts are, but from what we know, here's how the story plays out. Davy, along with 200 men, held off thousands of Mexican soldiers for more than 12 days. However, since they were mere men and not immortals, they got overwhelmed. In the final fight, Davy Crockett was killed while defending the Alamo. Some historians debate whether Crockett was one of the 6 soldiers who surrendered in exchange for their lives, but the opponents didn't agree with them and honored the agreement, ending up butchering all of the survivors. What do you think is the actual truth? Let us know in the comments down below. Doc Holliday. John Henry. Doc was originally a dentist in Texas, which is precisely why he had such a nickname. While working on his profession, Doc had other interests too, such as playing cards. But that fondness led him to a rather different and darker path.
You now, you son of a bitch. Your daisy if you do.
This is where he became close with Wild West legends like Wyatt Earp, and then partook in his fair share of shootouts, playing cards, and drinking a lot. Since Doc was drinking a lot and became someone who fell from grace, his pre-existing tuberculosis worsened, but his addiction didn't stop. This made him sicker and sicker to the point where he finally died in his bed at the age of 36 while seeking treatment. He is a Wild West legend who was a doctor turned rogue, which is precisely why he's this badass figure to the general public. Henry Plummer. In the past, playing both sides would get you in a lot of trouble. Don't worry, we will get to the main subject in a bit. Henry Plummer, depending on who you ask, was a law-abiding sheriff who was slain without any evidence. Others would say that he misused his power and that he was rightfully hanged. But how exactly did it happen? With only a few limited facts, we know that Henry killed multiple people, and some people say that it was in self-defense. He was the electric sheriff just a year before his death, and was killed when a mob forced him up to the gallows and ultimately hanged him there. Buffalo Bill Cody. While we've covered a lot of outlaws, look at someone whose name was in every household in the late 1800s. This was thanks to his Wild West traveling show, which even reached many parts of Europe, showcasing American culture to everyone. Cody died from kidney failure while visiting his sister on January 10, 1917, but his burial was stopped because he wanted his burial to be on top of Lookout Mountain in Colorado. This mountain had incredible views, but in order to honor Cody's request, people would need to travel through the crazy show, which became impossible. However, to honor his request, his body was kept in cold storage for 6 months, requiring embalming 6 separate times. And he was finally buried there. The mortuary where Cody's boy sat is now a restaurant called Linger. Butch Cassidy. Butch Cassidy is truly the classic depiction of a Wild West cowboy and gunslinger because he was the leader of the train and bank robbers who called themselves the Wild Bunch. His partner, Harry Longabaugh, was just as dangerous, and unlike many outlaws of the time, he had a reputation for being non-violent, staying low-key, and using smart tactics to raid trains and banks. Even though he was the smartest guy of his time, he found himself being pursued by Pinkerton detectives across a landscape that was developing quickly. After being pursued by the police, they sought refuge and, with the Sundance Kid, Cassidy fled to South America, where they operated a ranch in Argentina. However, they could not stop their wrongdoings there either, and ultimately, they were cornered by the Bolivian soldiers and were gunned down for a long time till they died. Even to this date, some people say that they escaped and bribed their way out. Billy the Kid. Billy the Kid was a gunslinger, an orphan, and a guy who quickly resorted to crime to survive. He was also called William H. Bonney and Kid Antrim before making his first recorded kill in 1877 at just the age of 17. Later, his involvement with the Lincoln County War got him into deep trouble, while earning him a good reputation in the New Mexico Territory too. Billy the Kid was violent and presented as a folk hero who stood against wealthy ranch owners and corrupt lawmen. He would evade capture, and when he was finally sentenced to death, he even escaped jail. However, in 1881, Billy the Kid was ambushed and shot by Sheriff Pat Garrett, and by the time he was 21, he was already gone from this world. This just goes to show how much trouble Billy the Kid would bring at such a young age, because he became a national threat. And that's it, folks. These Wild West legends died terrible and tragic deaths, and while some of them were evil and deserved their bad ending, others had just a very melancholic and sad ending. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell icon for more Wild West stories.